We give you our best 3 bets for Week 10 in college football, and it all starts right now. Hey guys, it's Matt from GrandstandBettors.com, and we're back with our Week 10 college football plays. We're going to dive into those picks and predictions in just a moment, but first, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're wanting picks and predictions every week here for college football. And while you're at it, smash that like button if you're ready for some more top 25 matchups this upcoming Saturday. I know we are. So, without further ado, let's dive in and start things off with the biggest game of the season. Number 1 Tennessee versus number 3 Georgia in the 3:30 Eastern time slot. Georgia favored by 8.5 points, and the over-under at the moment is set at 66.5. Now, the Tennessee Volunteers are 8-0 on the season for the first time since 1998, and following their win over Alabama, they continued to make a statement last week, beating Kentucky 44-6. Now, their offense has put up some insane numbers this year, which has got them ranked first in yards per game, second in pass yards per game, and first in points per game. Hayden Hooker is coming off yet another great performance last week, throwing for 245 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He was a bit reserved on the ground game, most likely to make sure he would be healthy for this game, but he still rushed 10 times for 23 yards and a touchdown, which just shows you how versatile he is as a quarterback. Also opens up their run game well nicely with guys like Jalen Wright and Jabari Small, who have over 475 yards rushing this season. In addition to those guys, Tennessee is loaded at wide receiver, and their star player, Jalen Hyatt, absolutely torched Kentucky last week, went off for 2 touchdowns and 153 receiving yards. Now, with how good this team's offense has been this season, there is one part of the team that is really struggling, and that is their secondary. They were giving up 329 passing yards per game entering last week. However, they did hold Levis and that Kentucky offense to only 98 passing yards, which has to give that team some boosting, some confidence heading into this matchup against Georgia. Now, their defense also has a very good run defense, which is only giving up 92 yards per game on the ground, and unlike Georgia, their front 7 has generated a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, putting up 21 sacks so far on the season. Getting pressure on Bennett is essential in this game if the Vols want to pull the upset and remain undefeated. On the other side of the field, you have the Georgia Bulldogs, who once again are 8-0, and they have done it in dominant fashion. With the exception of that Week 5 scare at Missouri, they've outscored their opponents 304-62, all by an average of 34 points. Offensively, they have been led by Sean Bennett and tight end Brock Bowers. They have connected 31 times this year for 547 yards, and no one has had an answer for defending that duo. The reason for this is that Georgia has 3 other receivers with over 250 receiving yards, so it makes it virtually impossible for defenses to cover everyone. Now, what's interesting about this offense is despite all those great wide receivers they have, they only have 13 receiving touchdowns this season. The other 28 of their team's 41 offensive touchdowns have been scored on the ground, and a lot of them have come from running backs Edwards and McIntosh. Combined, these guys have put up 772 yards on the ground and 13 touchdowns. With such a balanced attack on offense, it makes sense no one has really been able to stop the offense, as they're putting up 40 points per game this season. On the defensive side of the ball, Georgia, again this year, has been dominant after losing even all those players to the NFL in the offseason. They have only given up 84 points all season, and they are ranked 4th in yards per game, 13th in pass defense, and 4th in rush defense. They have a very big front 7 led by Stackhouse and Williams, but the interesting thing is about this defense, despite putting up all those numbers, is the lack of pressure they have gotten to on opposing quarterbacks this season. Through 8 games, they only have 10 sacks, which is ranked 113th in college football. The last thing you want to do is give Hayden Hooker time in the pocket, so this is going to be something that we certainly need to look at in this matchup. So what is our best bet for this marquee matchup on Saturday? Well, we all know Georgia is still the team to beat, and they have phenomenal offense and defensive sides of the football. But from what we've seen this season with their pass rush, we're not confident they're going to be able to get pressure on Hooker and disrupt the Tennessee offense like Alabama already failed to do. Tennessee's passing attack behind Hooker is going to be the biggest challenge for this Georgia secondary this season, and as long as they can mitigate the damage Brock Bowers does offensively for the Bulldogs, Tennessee should be in this one the whole game and give us another breathtaking finish in the SEC. So, with our first pick of Week 10 in college football, we're going to take the Tennessee Vols plus 8.5 over the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, the next matchup we're going to look at is the number 6 Alabama Crimson Tide against the number 10 LSU Tigers. This is in the 7 p.m. Eastern time slot. Alabama 13.5 point favorites and the over-under set at 56.5. Alabama, they have had a relatively quiet season this year, but still sit 6th in the country with their only loss coming to Tennessee a few weeks ago. With a bye week last week, Bryce Young should finally be back to 100% for this matchup against LSU, which should put their offensive production back to where it was at the beginning of the season. Young has thrown for 704 yards and 4 touchdowns since coming back from injury, and as strong as their passing game is, which they will surely utilize in this matchup, we see them actually attacking the Tigers on the ground in this one. With Young's ability to run the football as a constant threat, Alabama also has running backs Gibbs, who leads their team with 672 yards this season and is averaging a crazy 6.9 yards per carry. Along with wide receivers Ja'Cory Brooks and Trayshawn Holden, this is going to be a very lethal offense, and they're going to be a good test for a Tigers defense. Now, defensively for Alabama, they're only giving up 16.6 points per game, and even with giving up a ton of yardage to Tennessee, they're still holding offenses to only 201 passing yards and 93.9 rushing yards per game. Now, what is very impressive about this unit is that 16 different players have gotten a sack already on the season. They get a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and they bring it from all over the field, which makes it hard for those offenses to get into a rhythm. If LSU can't find a way to slow down the rolling Tide's pressure, it will be a long day for them, just like it was for Mississippi State 2 weeks ago. On the other side of the football, speaking of LSU, they have home field advantage here, and they're 6-2 on the season, coming off a dominant performance, 45-20 over Ole Miss last week. In that game, the Tigers absolutely massacred the Ole Miss defense on the ground. Quarterback Jaden Daniels alone had 121 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. But as a team, they put up 252 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. Over the course of the season, they are averaging actually 183 rushing yards per game. Where they have performed almost on par with Alabama this season offensively is their passing attack. Jaden Daniels has 1,800 passing yards, and they have 4 very good wide receivers that he throws the ball to. Combined, they all have 10 touchdowns, and they all have over 280 receiving yards, almost averaging 14 yards per catch. Tennessee absolutely shredded the Alabama secondary, so this certainly should be an area that the Tigers are going to want to attack offensively in the matchup. On the other side of the ball with LSU, though, the defensive side, it started off great this season, only giving up 73 points through 5 games, but in their next 3 games, they gave up 95 points. In that matchup against Tennessee, the Vols exposed a big weakness with this team, and that is stopping the run. They gave up 263 rushing yards in that game, and then the next week to Florida, they gave up 210 rushing yards. Even with Ole Miss barely running the ball last week in the second half of the game, they put up 117 rushing yards as well. With Bryce Young's ability to run the football and a very good go-to rushing attack for Alabama, we have a hard time thinking that LSU is going to stop Alabama on the ground. Now, their secondary should do all right in this one. They've only given up 204 passing yards per game this season, which is 35th in the country, but realistically, the only way they will be able to stop the run is putting more guys in the box, and that's just going to make their secondary even weaker for Bryce Young to pick apart. So what is our best bet here for the second top 10 SEC matchup of week number 10? Well, that's going to come down to a couple things for us. First, the clear advantage Alabama has offensively in this game. Second, the defensive line Alabama has. Alabama has been very good at stopping the run this season, while the Tigers have really struggled, and they're going to have a much harder time defending Alabama's run game than Alabama will defend LSU's. Now, the final point, the difference is the coach. We aren't going to get into the debate of whether Brian Kelly is a good coach or not, but historically, and being an Irish fan, you can trust me on this point. Historically, he is awful in big games, especially against Saban. Now, we think the books are a little too high on the Tigers after last week, so with our second best bet for this Saturday, we're going to take Alabama minus 13.5 over LSU. Now, before we get to our third best bet of week number 10, just a reminder, if you're looking for our entire card, what we're actually betting for week 10, head on over to grandstandbettors.com, become part of our family. The link's below in the description. Would love to have you join our community today. But as we mentioned, we have one more bet, and it's in the prime time, and it's another top 25 matchup between Wake Forest at 21 and NC State at 22 at 8 p.m. Eastern. Wake Forest 4.5-point favorites here, over-under set at 54.5. Now, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons entered 6-1 last week, with their only loss coming against Clemson in double overtime, but then they suffered an embarrassing loss as they fell 48-21 to Louisville. In that game, they turned the ball over 8 times, and get this, 6 of those were in the third quarter alone. It was insane watching how careless they were with the football in this game, and hopefully they can turn things around in this matchup against NC State. Offensively, Demon Deacons have been putting up some great numbers this season. They're averaging 434 yards per game and 39 points. With the exception of last week, quarterback Sam Hartman has been playing well this season, has over 2,000 yards passing and 22 touchdowns on the year. They have 6 wide receivers, all with over 200 receiving yards, but junior wideout Perry has been the favorite target this season. Now, with the passing attack as the strength of Wake Forest offense, they're only averaging 136 rushing yards per game this year. Their top back only has 450 yards on the ground. On the other side of the ball, defensively, you can't blame them for giving up 48 points last week as Wake Forest's defense dealt with 2 pick sixes from Louisville, and Louisville's 2 of their drives also in that third quarter started on Wake Forest side of the field. So you can't really blame the defense there. Their defense is a bit better than numbers would suggest after last week, but still, they're only ranked 73rd in pass defense and 68th in run defense. They have been good, however, keeping bad teams out of the end zone, but the 2 best offenses they faced this season did put up a combined 99 points against them. We're very skeptical about this defense, but they might get a break in this one as NC State has not exactly been lights out on offense this season. Speaking of the Wolfpack, NC State season was really ruined by that loss to Syracuse a few weeks ago. They had looked pretty solid so far, with their only loss being to Clemson by 10, but then they were only able to put up 9 points against Syracuse. Even last week, they only scored 22 points against Virginia Tech, which brings us to our first point against this team, and that is how they have struggled to move the ball down the field this season. Through their 8 games, they are only averaging 230 passing yards and 125 rushing yards and 26.8 points per game. A big reason for this has been the inefficiency from quarterback Dylan Leary, who had a 61 completion percentage and 4 interceptions to only 11 touchdowns. He is out for the rest of the season, though, with a torn pec, and this offense looks like it could turn itself around and maybe turn that corner behind freshman MJ Morris. It was announced he is going to start for this game after his performance last week against Virginia Tech, which he ended the day with 265 passing yards and 3 touchdowns with no picks. Now, it looks like they're going to get a huge boost with him at quarterback because the Wolfpack really need help in their passing game since they have gotten minimal production from their rushing attack. Jordan Houston leads this team with only 335 yards on the season. He's only averaging 3.9 yards per carry and has yet to record a rushing touchdown. Now, if their offense can figure things out, they surely will be one of the better teams in the country with the way their defense has been playing. They're only giving up 17.4 points per game, and the only reason this team does not have losses against East Carolina, Florida State, and Virginia Tech has been because of the defense. With one of the best secondaries in the country, that will surely be a matchup to watch against the Demon Deacons, who rely heavily on the passing game to put up points. So what is our best bet in this primetime matchup on Saturday? Well, in our opinion, honestly, NC State should have no problem shutting down Wake Forest's offense, especially that passing attack with such a great secondary that they have. On the other side of the football, when it comes to the offense of NC State, MJ Morris gave the Wolfpack some hope offensively last week. We think it is going to take him another week to really get things rolling in NC State to put up some big offensive numbers. So with our final free pick for this Saturday, Week 10 in college football, we're going to take Wake Forest, NC State under 54.5 points. Well, that does it for us here at Grandstand Bettors. We will be at Notre Dame Stadium as they take on number 4 Clemson at 7 p.m. on Saturday. Tune into our TikTok. We're going to try to go live. We're going to be tailgating from about noon on. Check out our TikTok, Grandstand Bettors, and maybe you'll see us there live at Notre Dame. And hopefully we can pull off an unbelievable upset. But as always, we want you, the viewer, to sit back, relax, enjoy Week 10 of college football, and we'll see you back here, same time, same place, next week.